Grüß, willkommen in einem and in a Fragens video. Welcome to another exciting video, in this case episode 28 of my organisational series of videos. In this video I'll cover the structure and strengths of the formation of a number of WARPAC members during the 1980s. After creating a number of videos on various World War II armoured divisions and the formations of the PLA and ROCA, I realised that the format I used seemed to be moderately popular. I don't mean general layperson popular, as few, if any, laypeople would have an interest or understanding of battalion structures of a division or brigade. I mean people who have an interest in the subject, but not enough to drill down into the company structure. As a result, I decided to create a video on NATO and WARPAC formations from 1980, specifically 1986, this being my second video, in this case covering WARPAC. There are some people who feel that if World War II would begin, it would likely occur sometime between 1986 and 1988 and would involve a last-gap attempt by the Soviet Union to avert economic collapse by unifying the people in war and extracting wealth from Western Europe. This is based on an article written in the Soviet military journal Red Star back in the mid-1980s. The writer of this article saw the dangers of the Airland 2000 asymmetrical warfare doctrine to the Soviet linear doctrine and suggested if an attack, that is Soviet attack, was not carried out before the NATO doctrine was adopted, the Soviets could never attack at all. This represented an opinion by the hawks in the Soviet military. I personally feel that this was a very unlikely scenario, as the Soviet Union in this period was like a very old man. Even if it wanted to conduct that aggressive strategy, it would prefer a nap and a warm cup of cocoa. Now let's get back to the video. I'll be listing the main division brigade formations of some of the WARPAC countries from this period down to battalion level. Using my trusty micro-armour rules point system, I'll attempt to arrive at a strength for each formation. As with my other videos, I'll be using the point system from the old 1986 micro-armour rules Corps Commander. In future videos, I will provide a comparison of the strengths of the opposing forces. This shows a quick example of the point system, in this case a first wave Russian tank division which was deployed in Europe in 1989. The regiment, or equivalent, level command is now listed. The number of each regiment is indicated with the red lines. Its combat strength is further to the right. The final formation level is the battalion, or equivalent. The number of each battalion is included, in this case 3 tank battalions. Moving over to the right, we come to a battalion's combat strength, in this case 875, followed by a battalion code, and finally combat values, using a set of rules based on the SPI Modern Battles board game. This value will generally be ignored in the video, that is the board game value, as it's used for a set of figure gaming rules, but the other values will be used as they provide an idea of the battalion's strength and type. In front of the battalion name is a mobility symbol, which could be motorised, horse, cycle, armoured and so on. In this case, the mobility is ICV, or Infantry Combat Vehicle. For some of the battalions, an idea of the weapon within is provided. In this case, this is a battalion which consists of 122mm howitzers. Let's first start with the Russian formations. Most of the Russian formations were deployed in East Germany. However, significant forces were available in the rear, such as countries like Poland, Hungary, and of course Russia itself. Before moving into the formations themselves, a few notes about the way the Soviets grouped these formations. The Soviets had 3 levels of readiness. Raznoneta, which is ready, expand, filled up, which is the translation. A unit was considered ready if it could conduct combat operations with little or no mobilization. The other class was ne raznoneta, which is non-ready. The last level was a reserve, or zapas, which primarily meant reserve or stock. I'll leave it up to the viewer to interpret those titles, but the explanations seem reasonably clear. It should be noted that the Soviets decided to prepare for an invasion. Formations which were not ready would be brought up to a state of readiness as quickly as possible and would be available to feed into the front line as reserves or a second attack wave. I would presume at the earliest a week, and for formations further away several weeks. The reserves would likely take a lot longer to prepare. The second classification, which I'll sort of cover here, is more of a NATO definition. The concept of first line or wave, second line or wave, and third line or wave. I'm uncertain if the Soviets ever grouped their divisions into such groupings, but these could correspond to equipment levels. A first wave would be equipped with T-80s and T-72s, a second wave T-64-62s, and a third wave T-55-54s. The same breakdown would exist for anti-tank and anti-aircraft weapons. Presumably, it would be possible for a first wave division equipped with T-72s to be either ready or non-ready, as it would be possible for a second wave division equipped with T-64-62s to be ready or not ready as well. With the lack of any real hard data, a lot of these classifications will need to be guesswork. Thus, my divisional structures is based on whether I feel the division is a first wave, second wave, or third wave. The ready or not ready classification is more related to mobilization time and not directly related to equipment. But we could assume most first wave would be ready and most second wave would not be ready, with all third wave being reserved. Viewers are free to interpret this in any way they wish, as I certainly do not pretend to be the source of perfect truth in this particular area. I'll start with the first wave divisions, one's equipped with T-80s and one's equipped with T-72s. As these divisions were based in East Germany, they were probably in a ready status. The period around 1986 was a transitional period for the Soviets as well as NATO, although with the Soviets it's purely related to new weapons being delivered and nothing to do with the doctrine. The main weapon was the T-80, although new versions of the BMP and BTR were also being delivered. I'm uncertain which formation received these weapons first, but it's likely the 11th Guards Tank Division would have been one of the first divisions to receive the new main battle tank. I'm uncertain if the entire division was equipped with these new weapons, or if it was based by a regiment, but in this case I'm assuming the entire division received the new T-80 main battle tank by 1986. This makes this division the closest to the new NATO divisions receiving the M1 main battle tank. When we look at the equipment manifest for 1985, we see there are 288 T-80s and 31 T-62s in this division. This division contained an impressive list of assets: air defence, recon, engineer, SSM, maintenance and helicopter formations. While the list was long, the strengths of each formation was not particularly impressive, with the exception of the reconnaissance battalion. The artillery regiment consisted of two 122mm self-propelled howitzer battalions, a 152mm self-propelled battalion and a 122mm MRL battalion or rocket battalion. Rocket Artillery Battalion. It provided a respectable amount of indirect fire support. The BMP motor rifle regiments contained a reasonable or consisted of a reasonable strength, equivalent to the smaller NATO brigades. The BMP motor battalions and the T-80 tank battalions complemented each other rather well, and each provided the Soviets with a battalion-level formation that could match a similar NATO battalion, at least in theory. Of course, when the Soviet division makes up for where the Soviet division makes up for this lack in strength is the sheer number of regiments, 4 in all in total here. The tank regiment, while slightly weaker, was nonetheless a powerful formation. The tank battalion was unusually weak due to the small size of Soviet companies, but the BMP motor rifle battalion provided a significantly powerful offensive force. The T-80 equipped tank division provided the Soviets with a powerful formation. However, in 1986, most of the first wave tank divisions would have still been equipped with a T-72, which was a reasonably good main battle tank, but not as powerful as the T-80, at least in theory. Let's now look at a more typical first wave tank division equipped with T-72s, in this case the 16th Guards Tank Division. We do know that when we look at the equipment manifest in 1991, which shows 261 T-80s, this division did get upgraded to the T-72s, and I'm not 100% certain when this actually occurred. The structure of this division remained much the same as the previous, except in this case, the division was equipped with T-72 main battle tanks and a number of other older weapon systems, such as the towed 120mm mortar. It's unlikely that this division would have had an attached helicopter squadron, but I've included it nonetheless, as this was one of the most powerful Soviet groups, and there is a possibility it did possess this formation. The divisional assets were the same as the previous division, except for the 16th Guards Tank Division. There was no SSM battalion. I'm uncertain why this was the case, but does indicate there was possibly more variability in the Soviet structures that NATO feels is the case, or assumed was the case anyway. The artillery regiment was identical both in equipment structure and combat strength. As expected, the BMP motor rifle regiments were weaker due to older equipment, but not significantly weaker, perhaps 4% weaker in total. The drop in combat strength, at least based by my point system, was more significant in the tank regiments, perhaps dropping as much as 6% in terms of combat capability. When I originally created this video, I assumed the 3rd Guards Tank Division was equipped with T-64s based on some of the information. It was deployed in Belarus and was part of the 7th Tank Army. As a result, it was likely a second wave division, which would have taken several days to mobilise and would have made up the second wave of any Soviet forces. However, subsequent to that, when I looked at the actual manifest that was indicated in 1985, it shows the division had 322 T-72s, which meant that this was almost certainly a second wave division, but it was equipped with T-72s, which once again, to emphasise the complexity of trying to work out this first, third wave thing with the Russian ready, not ready, and reserve classifications. Irrespective of the reality, I'm going to assume that this formation, the 3rd Guards Tank Division, was equipped with T-64s and would have been a second wave division, so we can look at the actual structure. While this division would take some time to get ready, it was still fully manned in theory and contained weapons which could hold their own on the modern battlefield. The divisional support of a second wave division was significantly less, with no helicopter squadron and a much smaller reconnaissance battalion. The artillery still packed as much punch, but a lot of the artillery was towed as it did lack, and as a result it did lack some mobility when compared with the fully self-propelled artillery battalions of what I earlier showed, which was a first wave division. The BMP motor rifle regiments were also weaker than the first wave divisions, but the drop was only in the order of about 5%. It's also possible this was not equipped with ICVs and may have used APCs such as the BTR-50. The tank regiments were also weaker because they were now equipped with T-62s and 64s, but surprisingly not as much as I would have originally expected. It's also possible this was not equipped, once again, with ICVs and may have also used APCs such as the BTR-50. Also in the Belarusian military district, the 76th Tank Division was likely a third wave division, as most of this formation was not manned. It would have taken several weeks to fully mobilise, using the equipment stored at its location. The troops would have been very local. It's likely this was armed with much older equipment, such as the T-55s or 54s and older APCs or trucks. However, when I did some additional research, I did identify the actual equipment manifest, and in 1990 it shows 314 T-62s. It's possible in 86 it was equipped with 54s, T-54s, but again, I cannot really confirm either way at the present moment. I find it interesting that a division with such comparatively modern equipment, T-62s, was in the reserve category, which meant that it would not actually be able to get into combat for at least a couple of weeks. The 76th Tank Division was little more than a base with equipment dumps and a skeleton cadre of officers, but given time it was able to be fleshed out with reservists and sent to the front line. Its biggest weakness was normally the use of older equipment, or even possibly not as well maintained equipment. For the moment, assuming this is a third wave division that was equipped with T-54s, the divisional support formations were much the same as the second wave formation, but as the second wave were rather weak compared with, let's say, the first wave divisions. The artillery was, in theory at least, similar to the second wave divisions. However, it must be noted training and troop quality would have been significantly lower. And we also need to understand a lot of this equipment was sitting in equipment storage facilities, and its maintenance level would have varied quite a bit. The motor rifle regiment of this third wave division was significantly weaker, with much less heavy equipment and vehicles than even the second wave divisions. They would have been reasonable in defence, but not so much in attack. The tank regiments were reasonably respectful, but they were definitely on the weak side. However, as with the other regiments, there were a lot of battalions to make up for this individual weakness. The self-propelled howitzers may have used, instead of using self-propelled howitzers, they may have used towed artillery, and the ICVs may well have been APCs, such as the BTR-50. Let's now look at the first wave motor rifle divisions. The first will be the 20th Guards Motor Rifle Division, which contained a tank regiment equipped with T-80 main battle tanks and BTR-80 APCs. While it's unlikely the rest of the division was equipped with the same main battle tanks, I'll assume that is the case here, as it's possible and gives us a maximum strength division. The chart on the left from Wiki claims to be the structure of the division 1988, which is not really quite correct. In 1988, the 1st Guard Tank Regiment was still with the division, and its replacement by the 9th Tank Regiment actually occurred in 1989, 1 year later. There was also a 4th Motor Rifle Regiment in the division, the 576th Beruzsk Order of Lenin Red Banner Order of the Suratov Motor Rifle Regiment, wow, that's a mouthful, was with a BTR regiment. I suspect this was probably a temporary attachment, and as such I'll ignore it. On the right, the chart reflects the 21st Motor Rifle Division. The 21st Motor Rifle Division was likely fully equipped with T-72 main battle tanks and BTR-70 APCs throughout, thus represents an average first wave division strength. The 20th Guards Motor Rifle Division, shown here, is equipped with the T-80 main battle tank and a number of the most modern equipment. I'm uncertain if the entire division possessed the latest weapons available, and in 1986 it's probably unlikely, but that's the assumption I'm using at this moment. When we look at the equipment manifest in 1985, this division contained 231 T-62s and 40 T-80 main battle tanks. It was clearly in the process of being upgraded to the T-80, and I'm not sure what the state would have been in the following year. Like the Tank Division, the divisional assets of the Motorised Rifle Division is impressive, with the exception of the Independent Tank Battalion, which was not very powerful. Anti-aircraft, reconnaissance, anti-tank, tank, engineer, SSM, maintenance, and an attached helicopter squadron can be found under divisional command. The main difference from the Tank Division was the addition of an anti-tank and tank battalion. The Artillery Regiment is similar to that in the Tank Division, respectively powerful and self-propelled. The BMP Motor Rifle Regiment is similar to that in the Tank Division, a reasonably well-balanced and powerful formation. The BTR Motor Rifle Regiments used the wheeled BTR APC, and while a reasonable vehicle, it was not an infantry combat vehicle. As a result, the strength of this formation is lower, but is nonetheless respectively powerful. The Tank Regiment is similar to that in the Tank Division, and by using the T-80 main battle tank, it was a reasonably powerful formation. Now let's look at a first wave motor rifle division that probably would have been more typical. This is the 21st Guards Motor Rifle Division, which contained a tank regiment equipped with the T-72 and BTR-70 APCs. This would have been probably a more typical first wave division. The equipment manifest for 1985 shows 226 T-64s, 43 T-64 main battle tanks. So once I look at this more, I feel the older tanks ended up in the motor rifle division, but nonetheless this division may well have been upgraded to the T-80 main battle tank by the following year or the following few years in the future. Nonetheless, for our comparison, I'm going to assume this uses the T-72 main battle tank. This shows the structure of the 21st Guards Motor Rifle Division, which, as per the previous Motor Rifle Division, is a surprisingly complex structure and division. The divisional level support formations were extensive. It possessed the expected support formations such as an ADM or Air Defence Missile Regiment, Reconnaissance Battalion, Anti-Tank Battalion, Engineer Battalion, SSM Battalion and Maintenance Battalion. It also contained an Independent Tank Battalion. The Artillery Regiment contained 2 light artillery battalions equipped with the 122mm howitzer armed self-propelled artillery, a medium artillery battalion equipped with the 152 self-propelled howitzer battalion and an MLRS battalion, or rocket artillery battalion. The primary motorised infantry formation was the BMP Motor Rifle Regiment, which was equipped with BMP ICVs. This contained an organic artillery battalion equipped with 122mm self-propelled howitzers and a tank battalion, in this case equipped with the T-72 main battle tanks. Using my point system, its strength was decent and equivalent to many NATO mechanised brigades. The following 2 motor rifle regiments were equipped with BTR APCs, which resulted in a reduced combat strength. Finally, we have a tank regiment equipped with the T-72 main battle tanks and BMP ICVs. This regiment also contained a 122mm self-propelled howitzer battalion, allowing for independent operation. While the individual regiments were weaker than the US Brigade, each division contained 4 regiments, making this division, at least on paper, very much on paper, very powerful. Let's look at a second wave motor rifle division. These would have been equipped with the T-64 main battle tank and were most likely considered as not ready. The 50th Guards motor rifle division was likely a second wave division, as it was located in the Belarusian military district and was part of the 28th Army. In the event of war, it would have been quickly brought up to ready status and sent in as a second wave of forces. The equipment manifest does show 214 T-64 main battle tanks, so in this case it all aligns quite well. The basic structure of a second wave division is similar to that of first wave. It was intended to be used as reinforcements for any offensive. However, the older equipment and lower quality troops would have made it significantly less effective. Unlike a first wave division, the anti-aircraft battalion was equipped with towed 57mm anti-aircraft guns. The reconnaissance battalion consisted of AVRs such as the BRDM-2 and was also significantly weaker. Other than that, the divisional assets were similar to that of a first wave division. The artillery was primarily armed with towed howitzers rather than the self-propelled howitzers. This would have given it the same punch, but with significantly less mobility, or lesser mobility. The second wave division did not have any BMP regiments. Instead, all were BTR regiments. In addition, these lacked any armour or self-propelled howitzers. The tank regiment was much the same as the first wave tank regiments, except it was equipped with, in this case, T-64s, and also BTRs. Now we come to the final type, the third wave or reserve or mobilised divisions, such as the 149th Motor Rifle Division. I'm assuming if war should occur, these divisions will become manned using older equipment storage at the local or main location of the division. This would take a while to mobilise, get ready and be sent into the front line. For interest, the equipment manifest for 1985 shows 214 T-55-54 main battle tanks. It's possible that these divisions were actually not the third wave divisions and were true emergency militia divisions. Several divisions in the Moscow military districts were only partially mobilised, with many formations being totally unmanned. These may have been the true third wave division NATO often refers to. Examples are the 32nd Guards Motor Rifle Division, which had many supporting formations unmanned. Irrespective of this, the final wave of Soviet divisions would have used the older T-54, BTR 50s, APCs and towed artillery. The third wave division lacked a tank battalion but was otherwise in principle the same as the second wave division. The artillery regiment was, once again in principle, the same as the second wave division. In most cases the third wave division or reserve divisions lacked any manpower in their artillery formations, so it's possible many of these divisions would have gone to the front line lacking most of their artillery. The rifle regiment was very basic, men in armoured trucks, or if they were lucky, older APCs, if unlucky, unarmoured trucks. The tank regiment, again, was much the same as the previous second wave tank regiment, except it was equipped with older equipment. And also a lot of this was unmanned at any particular point in time, so would have required a significant period of time to man and basically maintain the equipment to an operational state. All the WARPAC countries used Soviet structure, typically second wave structural divisions. There were some minor equipment differences between the nations, with East Germany getting ZSU 57-2s in their AA companies instead of 57mm towed AA guns as per the other second wave divisions. The East Germans by 1999 equipped their tank divisions with T-72s, with the motor rifle divisions containing T-55, so probably represented one of the more advanced equipped WARPAC allied countries. We'll first be looking at the first motor rifle division, which was similar to the second wave Soviet divisions. Equipment manifest for 1990 shows 214 T-55 main battle tanks. The divisional support was similar to a Soviet second wave division, except the Germans used air defence missiles instead of anti-aircraft guns. The artillery was all towed and was identical to a standard Soviet second wave division. The motor rifle regiments were equipped with the BTR-70s and some BTR-60s, and otherwise resembled a second-wave Soviet division. The tank regiment, at least in this particular division, used the T-55 main battle tank. The East German 9th Tank Division followed the second-wave structure as well. However, it was equipped with the modern T-72, making it a very powerful WARPAC tank division. The equipment manifest for 1990 shows 322 T-72 main battle tanks. All the WARPAC countries used the Soviet structure, typically second-wave divisions with some minor modifications. There were some minor equipment differences between the nations, with Poland using the OT-64A or C instead of the BTR-60s, OT-62A-B instead of the BTR-50s or BMPs, D-44 85mm guns instead of the T-12 anti-tank guns, and Folge replacing the BRDM-2s. The Polish Mechanized Division followed the second-wave structure, with the T-55 being the primary main battle tank. Equipment manifest shows 16 T-34s, which I found surprising, and 201 T-54/55s. The Polish 5th Tank Division also followed the second-wave structure, with the main tank being the T-55. Equipment manifest in 1985 shows 283 T-54/55s. Let's now drill into Czechoslovakia to determine what the equipment differences were. The Czechoslovakians used the OT-64AC instead of the BTR-60s, OT-62ABs instead of the BTR-50 or BMP, OT-65A instead of the BRDM-2. The regimental AA units used the M53/50 AA guns, the divisional AA units using the twin-towed 30mm 88Gs instead of towed 57mm anti-aircraft guns. The Czechoslovakian Motorized Rifle Division followed the second-wave structure, with the T-55 being the primary main battle tank. The equipment manifest in 1985 shows 214 T-54/55s. The Czechoslovakian 1st Tank Division also followed the second-wave structure, with the main tank being the T-72, but also containing a number of T-54/55s. The equipment manifest in 1985 shows 124 T-54, T-55s and 322 T-72s. Let's now drill into Hungary and let's look at the differences with the Hungarian forces. The Hungarians used the PSVH-4 instead of the BTR-60s, the D-54 or the D-44 85mm anti-tank guns instead of the T-12 anti-tank guns, and Folge instead of BRDM-2s. To keep this video short, I will show an average Hungarian motorized division. Although it's likely the main battle tank was the T-55 in this case. The 4th Mechanized Division equipment manifest for 1985 shows 188 T-54/55s. As this video is getting rather long, I will not include the other WARPAC countries. Viewers can get the full details on all divisions if you go to the Soviet Armed Forces 1945 to 1991 Organization and Order of Battle site. The URL will be found at the end of the video or in the notes. I was originally going to provide a comparison between the various formations, but this video is long enough and I'll do that in my final series of comparison videos on the NATO and WARPAC formations. This concludes episode 28 of my organisational video series, in this case looking at the WARPAC military formations in the 1980s. One thing that I must point out, or one thing I did notice, if I'm using my point system, the Soviet divisions were extraordinarily powerful. I mean, when I compare NATO with the Soviet Union, it really does look like the WARPAC forces would easily be able to overwhelm NATO. However, when I actually started drilling down into equipment manifest and maintenance levels and things of this nature, I discovered there was an awful lot more confusion about equipment manifest in different divisions, 1st, 2nd and 3rd wave type divisions, than I originally thought. And as a result, I suspect a lot of the first wave divisions would have not been equipped with the super modern weapons that NATO probably expected initially. So I probably would consider discounting quite a bit of the WARPAC force or combat strength if you wanted to do a historical breakdown or determination of what would occur in any future war. Something possibly for a future project on my part. Alle guten Ding, kommen zu einem Ende.